What's up, everybody? We are in Acts chapter 20, roughly page 1077 in the 2009 version of the scriptures. I don't know where else it would be, depending on what version you're reading, but we are in Acts chapter 20. Highly recommended you get out your Bible and see it with your own eyes. We're going to hear Paul, Shaul of Tarsus, testify today. And I pray that the Father would be with us, because there's some big stuff in here. Acts chapter 20. After the uproar had ceased. Oh, what uproar? You mean when Shaul is over here literally causing a riot to occur in Ephesus because of the great Artemis of the Ephesians, the guild workers who made carved images. Yeah, he kind of peed in their Cheerios. After the uproar had ceased, Shaul called the taught ones to him, and having embraced them, went away to go to Macedonia. And having gone through those parts, and having encouraged them with many words, he came to Greece, where he spent 3 months. When he was about to sail to Syria, he decided to return through Macedonia, as a plot was made against him by the Yehudim. They wanted to kill him. And he was accompanied by Sopater of Beroea, and Aristarchus and Secundos of the Thessalonians, and Gaius of Derbe, and Timotheus and Tuchikos, and Trophimus of Asia. And these, going ahead, waited for us at Troas. And we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread. So they paused because they sailed after the days of unleavened bread. So Shaul and the early church, including these dudes from Asia and Derbe and Thessalonia and Beroea, whatever, observed the days of unleavened bread. Why? Because Leviticus 23. How long is forever? The answer is forever. Malachi 3, verse 6, I'm the Lord Yahweh Sabaoth, I change not. Yeah, I know. And we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came to them at Troas in 5 days, where we stayed 7 days. And on day 1 of the week, the taught ones, having gathered together to break bread, Shaul, intending to depart the next day, was reasoning with them and was extending the word till midnight. So they were hanging out, fellowshipping till midnight. Now, I've seen it said that this right here, day 1 of the week, which is Sunday, by the way. I've heard it said, see, the early church, they were hanging out, breaking bread on Sunday. That's why we do church on Sunday. No, that's not why church is on Sunday. I would recommend you do some digging on that. One word, Constantine. What this says is they were hanging out, breaking bread. I am fortunate that I have many that I count as brethren, and we hang out on every day of the week, breaking bread. What is, oh, you know what? We'll just go look. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. Remember the Sabbath day. Remember what day it is. It's not Sunday, but I digress. And there were many lamps in the upper room where they were assembled, and a certain young man by the name of Eutokos was sitting in a window, being overpowered by a deep sleep. As Shaul kept on reasoning, he was overcome by sleep and fell down from the 3rd story and was picked up dead. So dude fell asleep because it was midnight and they were still preaching the word. And Shaul, having gone down, the dude fell out the window, having gone down, fell on him, and embracing him said, do not be upset, for his life is in him. Then going up again, and having broken bread and eaten, he talked a long while, even till daybreak, and so went forth. So he kept going. still, reasoning, preaching the word, fellowshipping, until sunup. And they brought the young man in alive, and were encouraged not a little. They were quite happy about this. And we, going ahead to the ship, sailed to Assos, intending to take Shaul on board there, for he had arranged, intending himself to go on foot. And when he met us at Assos, we took him on board and came to Mitulina, I don't know. And from there we sailed, and the next day came opposite Chios. And on the next day we arrived at Samos, and remained at Tragulian. And the following day we came to Miletos. For Shaul had decided to sail past Ephesus, so that he might lose no time in Asia, for he was hurrying to be at Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of the festival of Shavuot. What's the festival of Shavuot? Why is this dude in a hurry? This guy that said the Torah was done away with. Leviticus 23. And Shabadabadoo. And for the morrow, 23:15, Leviticus, and for the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 Sabbaths, completed Sabbaths. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Bring from your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour they are, baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahweh. And besides the bread, you shall bring 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and a young bull and 2 rams. They are an ascending offering to Yahweh, with their grain offering and their drink offerings, and an offering made by fire for sweet fragrance unto Yahweh. And you shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs a year old as the slaughter of peace offerings. And the priest shall wave them, besides the bread of the first fruits, as a wave offering before Yahweh. Besides the 2 lambs, they are set apart to Yahweh for the priest. And on this same day you shall proclaim a set-apart gathering for yourselves. You do no servile work on it, a law forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. A law forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. Wait a minute. I thought that was all done away with on the cross, because Shaul here in Acts chapter 20 is after the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua, of Jesus. Well, it turns out that a law forever means a law forever. And Shaul, Paul, the Apostle Paul, which many people say, well, because Paul said in Romans, Paul said in Galatians, Paul said in Ephesians. Don't take Paul out of context. And if you need context, the book of Acts is a great place to start, because we can see Paul keeping biblical feasts. We can see Paul taking a Nazirite vow. We can see Paul teaching Torah to people. For context, because context matters. So yes, for Shaul had decided, Acts 20 verse 16, to sail past Ephesus so that he might lose no time in Asia. For he was hurrying to be at Jerusalem if possible, on the day of the festival of Shavuot. And from Miletos he sent to Ephesus and called for the elders of the assembly. And when they had come to him, he said to them, you know, from the first day that I came to Asia, how I was with you all the time, serving the master with all humility, with many tears and trials which befell me by the plotting of the Yehudim, as I kept back no matter that was profitable, but proclaimed it to you, and taught you publicly and from house to house. I kept back no matter that was profitable. I taught you everything I know, but proclaimed it to you, and taught you publicly and from house to house, witnessing to Yehudim and also to the Greeks, repentance towards Elohim, repentance, turning to Shuvah, turning towards Elohim, and belief in our Master, Yeshua Messiah. And now see, I go bound in the Spirit to Jerusalem, not knowing what is going to meet me there, except that the set-apart Spirit witnesses in every city, saying that chains and pressures await me. But I do not count my life of any value to me, so that I might accomplish my mission with joy and the service which I received from the Master Yeshua, to bear witness to the good news of the favor of Elohim. And now see, I know that you all, among whom I went about proclaiming the reign of Elohim, shall see my face no more. Therefore, I witness to you this day that I am clear from the blood of all, for I kept not back from declaring to you all the counsel of Elohim. Be not just hearers of this word, but doers also. Therefore, take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the set-apart Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the assembly of Elohim, which he has purchased with his own blood. For I know this, after my departure, savage wolves shall come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also, from among yourselves men shall arise, speaking distorted teachings, to draw away the taught ones after themselves. Therefore, watch, remembering that for 3 years, night and day, I did not cease to warn each one with tears. And now, brothers, I commit you to Elohim and to the word of his favor, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among all those having been set apart. I have coveted no one's silver or gold or garments, and you yourselves know that these hands supplied my needs. And for those who were with me, all this I did. I show you by laboring like this that you ought to help the weak, and remember the words of the Master Yeshua, that he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And having said this, he knelt down and prayed with them all. And there was much weeping among them. And falling on Shaul's neck, they kissed him, distressed most of all because of the word which he had said, that they would see his face no more. And they went with him to the ship. So he stopped into town and said, hey, I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm probably going to end up in chains at best, killed at worst, but I count it all joy that I get to live this life set apart to the Master Yeshua. You're not going to see me again, so let's commiserate. But be aware, from among yourselves men shall arise, this is verse 30, speaking distorted teachings to draw away the taught ones after themselves. Let's flip quickly to the book of Matthew. Matthew 5:17. Matthew 5:17. And we're going to read through to 20. This is Yeshua speaking, Jesus. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly, truly I say to you, till the heaven and earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, teaches what? The Torah and the prophets. The Torah and the prophets. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heavens. But whoever does and teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom of heavens. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reign of the heavens. Your righteousness. What is righteousness? Blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah. Unless your ability to walk blamelessly in the commands exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, who were all jammed up with man-made religion and doctrines and dogmas, unless you can walk out what the Father has commanded you to walk without polluting it with this man-made doctrine, you shall by no means see the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. Also from among yourselves men shall arise, speaking distorted teachings to draw away the taught ones after themselves. Remember that there were 4 sects of Yehudim running around: the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, and the Zealots. There we go. Okay? The Pharisees were big. amongst the Yehudim. And it was the legalism of the Pharisees that Yeshua was railing against. So, also from among yourselves men shall arise speaking distorted teachings. These are the distorted teachings that Yeshua came to do away with in the first place. I just wanted to point that out there. Cool, so let's move on to 21. And it came to be, when we had torn ourselves away from them, and had set sail, we ran a straight course and came to Kos, and the next day to Rhodes, and from there Patara. And having found a ship passing over to Phoenicia, we went aboard to set sail. And having sighted Cyprus, and having passed it on the left, we sailed to Syria, and landed at Sor, for the ship was to unload her cargo there. And having found taught ones, we remained there 7 days. And they told Shaul through the Spirit not to go to Jerusalem. When it came to be that our days were ended, we left and went on, all of them accompanying us with wives and children till we were out of the city. And kneeling down on the beach, we prayed. And having embraced one another, we boarded the ship, and they returned to their homes. And when we had completed our voyage from Sor, we came to Ptolemy. I've heard it as Ptolemy, Ptolemaeus. We're going to go with Ptolemy. We came to Ptolemy, and having greeted the brothers who stayed with them one day. And having greeted the brothers, we stayed with them one day. And on the next day, we left and came to Caesarea, and went into the house of Philip the evangelist, who was one of the 7, and stayed with him. Now this one, Philip, had 4 maiden daughters who prophesied. And as we were staying many days, a certain prophet named Haggav came down from Judah. And having come to us, he took the girdle of Shaul, bound his own hands and feet, and said, Thus says the set-apart Spirit, Thus shall the Yehudim at Jerusalem bind the man who owns this girdle, and deliver him into the hands of the nations. So this dude Haggav is prophesying Shaul is going to get rolled up. And when we heard this, both we and those from that place begged him not to go up to Jerusalem, Shaul. And Shaul answered, What do you mean by weeping and breaking my heart? For I am ready not only to be bound, but also to die at Jerusalem for the name of the Master Yeshua. And as he could not be persuaded, we ceased, saying, Let the desire of the Master be done. And after those days, having made ready, we went up to Jerusalem. And also some of the taught ones from Caesarea went with us, and brought with them one, Mason of Cyprus, an early taught one, with whom we were to lodge. And when we had arrived at Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. There's a lot of bouncing around and traveling here. It's a bit of a narrative. It doesn't, at least for me, doesn't necessarily read super easy. Shaul is making his way back around through the churches that he has planted back towards Jerusalem. He has got a date with destiny in Jerusalem, and he's bouncing back around to these congregations that he planted, people that he's taught, and they're commiserating. He's saying his goodbyes, and he's on his way to Jerusalem. And on the following day, Shaul went in with us to Jacob, and all the elders came. And having greeted them, he was relating one by one what Elohim had done among the nations through his service. And when they heard it, they praised the Master. And they said to him, You see, brother, how many thousands of Yehudim there are who have believed, and all are ardent for the Torah. But they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Yehudim who are among the nations to forsake Moses, saying not to circumcise the children, nor to walk according to the practices. What then is it? They shall certainly hear that you have come. So do this, what we say to you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow, a Nazirite vow. Take them and be cleansed with them, and pay their expenses, so that they shave their heads. And all shall know that they have been informed about you, that what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. Well, Paul said it was done away with. You yourself, Shaul, also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. But concerning the nations who believe, we have written and decided that they should keep themselves from what is offered to idols, and blood, and what is strangled, and whoring. This is Acts chapter 15, 15 through 19. We've talked about this in a previous reading. That's no small deal. Idols, blood, strangulation, and whoring. You don't have to think real hard to find examples of all of that in today's modern society. And my challenge to you would be, if you claim Yeshua as Messiah, Jesus as the Christ, to examine your own life and see, where are you whoring? What is strangled in your life? Where is there blood? And what are your idols? And then I would implore you to read Acts 15 in context and realize that the very next verse says, after you deal with the whoring, the strangulation, the blood, and the idolatry, go to the temple on the Sabbath and hear the words of Moses. You yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. Then Shaul took the men on the next day, and having been cleansed with them, went into the set-apart place, the temple, to announce the completion of days of separation, Nazirite vow, Numbers chapter 6, until the offering should be presented for each one of them. And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Yehudim from Asia, seeing him in the set-apart place, were stirring up all the crowd. And they laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who is teaching all men everywhere against the people and the Torah and this place," making these false accusations again. What is the false accusation? This is exactly what James just warned about. He said, look, you have a reputation here of being somebody that teaches against the Torah. To prove that you do not, we know that you are ardent for the Torah, and there are many Yehudim who believe and are ardent for the Torah. So why don't you sponsor these 4 guys who are ending their vow, so everybody will see that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. Put the lie to all the false claims, Shaul, Paul, that you don't keep the Torah, that the Torah was done away with. This was handled in Acts chapter 21. Why the hell we still have to have this argument a couple thousand years later is beyond me. And the answer is, honestly, because people won't read their Bibles. Because people refuse to take personal responsibility for their own relationship with their Creator. We've all been lied to. I have been, and I'm still kind of pissed about it, and I really try not to be, and I really honestly try to have compassion for people who are brand new to this, who haven't seen this yet. But the Torah and the prophets were not done away with. We just saw that in Matthew 5:17. For truly I say unto you, till heaven and earth passes away, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the Torah till all be done. All has not been done yet. This is still in play, straight from the mouth of Jesus. And then Shaul, Paul, the guy who anybody who knows even a smidgen about their Bible, and probably only a smidgen about their Bible, says, well, yeah, but that was all done away with. It was nailed to the cross because of Colossians 2:14. Bro, you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. Now, Paul does not outrank Messiah, by the way, and Messiah himself says repeatedly, go read the book of John, if you love me, keep my commands. I give you no new doctrine. I and my Father are one. My doctrine is not mine, but of the one who sent me. I give you no new word, but the word that you've had from the beginning, the Torah. Shaul kept the Torah, and he is being accused by these men. Men of Israel, help. This is the man who is teaching all the men everywhere against the people and the Torah and this place. And besides, he also brought Greeks into the temple and has profaned this temple, because they had previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian with him in the city, whom they thought that Shaul had brought into the temple. They got it all mixed up, man. And the entire city was moved, and the people rushed together, seized Shaul, and dragged him out of the set-apart place. and immediately the doors were shut. And while they were seeking to kill him, a report came to the commander of the company of soldiers that all Jerusalem was in confusion. At once he took soldiers and captains and ran down to them. And they, having seen the commander and the soldiers, stopped beating Shaul. And then the commander came near and took him and commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and was asking who he was and what he had done. And in the crowd some were shouting this and that. And not being able to ascertain the truth because of the uproar, he commanded him, Shaul, to be taken into the barracks. And when he came to the stairs, he had to be carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. For a large number of the people followed after, crying out, "Away with him!" And as Shaul was about to be led into the barracks, he said to the commander, "Am I allowed to say something to you?" And he said, "Do you know Greek? Are you not the Mitzraim who some time ago stirred up a revolt that led to 4,000 assassins out into the wilderness?" But Shaul replied, "I am a Yehudi, I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beg you, allow me to speak to the people." And having given him permission, Shaul, standing on the stairs, motioned with his hand to the people, and when there was a great silence, he spoke in the Hebrew language, saying, we'll get to what he said here in a minute. But who was this dude who led 4,000 assassins? Josephus speaks of some dude who came out of Egypt to Jerusalem that was a false prophet. And a bunch of dudes followed him out to the Mount of Olives. And let's see. Gathered together about 30,000 persons whom he had deceived. These he brought out of the wilderness to the Mount of Olives, from thence designing to take Jerusalem by force and seize the Roman garrison and take the government of the people. But Felix prevented this design, meeting him with Roman soldiers, assisted by all the people, so that when they engaged, the Egyptian fled with a few, but most of those who were with him were destroyed or taken. Now it was some little time before this that this affair happened, and by these accounts of Josephus, though the Egyptian was discomforted, he was not taken, and he had made his escape. So it could have been Paul returning. The point here is that the response that the crowd had to Shaul, that had to Paul, was such that the soldiers who have just laid hands on him thought that he was the guy that led a revolution with somewhere between 4,000 and 30,000 people that they just had to put down a short while ago. Okay? Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Okay, so what did Shaul say? And having given him permission, Shaul, standing on the stairs, motioned with his hand to the people. And when there was a great silence, he spoke in the Hebrew language, saying, "Men, brothers, and fathers, hear my defense before you now." And when they heard that he spoke to them in Hebrew, they kept a greater silence. They didn't realize. And he said, "I am indeed a Yehudi, a Jew, having been born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, having been instructed according to the exactness of the Torah of our father, being ardent for Elohim, as you all are today, who persecuted this way," Yeshua, the way, the truth, the life. We're going to see later, as Paul continues to testify, that he says he believes. I just gotta. Where is it? Acts 24:14. "And this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the Elohim of my fathers, believing in all that has been written in the Torah and the prophets." Straight out of the mouth of Paul. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. "Who persecuted this way, which they call a sect, to the death, binding and delivering up into prisons both men and women, as also the high priest bears me witness, and all the eldership, from whom I also received letters to the brothers, and went to Damascus to bring in chains even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished. And it came to be as I was journeying and coming near Damascus about noon, suddenly a great light shone around me out of the heaven. And I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Shaul, Shaul, why do you persecute me? And I answered, Who are you, Master? And he said to me, I am Yeshua of Nazareth, whom you persecute. And those who were with me indeed saw the light and were afraid, but they did not hear his voice speaking to me. And I said, What shall I do, Master? And the Master said to me, Rise up, go into Damascus, and there you shall be told all that you have been appointed to do. And as I could not see because of the glory, the esteem of that light, being led by the hand of those who were with me, I came to Damascus. And a certain Ananias, a dedicated man according to the Torah, being well spoken of by all the Yehudim dwelling there, came to me and stood by and said to me, Brother Shaul, look up. And at that same hour I looked up at him. And he said, The Elohim of our fathers has appointed you to know his desire, to see the righteous one, Yeshua, the righteous one. What does righteousness mean? Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verse 6. Blamelessly walking in the commands of Yahweh, the righteous one, and to hear the voice of his mouth, because you shall be his witness to all the men that have seen and heard. And now, why do you delay? Rise up, be baptized, and wash away your sins, calling on the name of Yahweh. Calling on the name of Yahweh, by the way. And it came to be when I returned to Jerusalem, and while I was praying in the set-apart place, I came to be in a trance. And I saw him saying to me, Hurry and get out of Jerusalem speedily, because they shall not accept your witness concerning me. And I said, Master, they know that in every congregation I was imprisoning and beating those who believe in you. And when the blood of your witness Stephanos was shed, I was standing by and giving my approval of his death and keeping the garments of those who were killing him. And he said to me, Go, because I shall send you far from here to the nations. And they were listening to him, the crowd, they were listening to him until this word. And then they lifted up their voice, saying, Away with one such as this from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. And they were shouting and tearing their garments and throwing dust into the air. The commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks and said that he should be examined by flogging in order to find out why they were shouting against him. And as they were stretching him out with straps, Shaul said to the captain who was standing by, Is it permitted for you to whip a man who is a Roman and uncondemned? And when the captain heard, he went and reported to the commander, saying, Watch what you are about to do, for this man is a Roman. And having come, the commander said to him, Say to me, are you a Roman? And he said, Yeah, I'm a freaking Roman, dude. No. And he said, Yes. And the commander answered, With a large sum, I attained this citizenship. And Shaul said, Cool story, bro. I was born so. Then at once those who were about to examine him, or beat him, flog him, withdrew from him. And the commander was also afraid after he found out that he was a Roman, because he had bound him. And on the next day, intending to know for certain why he was accused by the Yehudim, he released him and commanded the chief priests and all their council to come, and brought Shaul down and set him before them. And Shaul, looking intently at the council, said, Men, brothers, I have lived in all good conscience before Elohim until this day. And the high priest Hananiah commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Shaul said to him, Elohim is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. And do you sit judging me according to the Torah? And do you command me to be struck contrary to the Torah? He's like, bro, you're breaking Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. And those who stood by said, Do you revile the high priest of Elohim? And Shaul said, I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest. For it has been written, You shall not speak evil of the ruler of your people. Now Shaul, perceiving that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, cried out in the council, Men, brothers, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. I am being judged concerning the expectation and resurrection of the dead. And when he had said this, there came a dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the crowd was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor messenger, nor spirit, but the Pharisees confess both. And there was a great uproar, and a certain of the scribes of the party of the Pharisees was earnestly contending, saying, We find no evil in this man, and if a spirit or a messenger has spoken to him, let us not fight against Elohim. And a great dissension having come, the commander, fearing lest Shaul would be pulled to pieces by them, commanded the body of soldiers to go down and seize him from their midst and bring him into the barracks. And on the following night, the master stood by him and said, Take courage, Shaul, for as you have witnessed for me in Jerusalem, so you have to bear witness at Rome too. And meaning, you ain't gonna die here, homie. You still have to witness in Rome. And when it became day, some of the Yehudim made a conspiracy and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink until they had killed Shaul. And those making this conspiracy were more than 40, who having come to the chief priests and elders said, We have bound ourselves under a great oath not to eat at all until we have killed Shaul. Now, then, you with the council inform the commander to have him brought down to you tomorrow, as intending to examine more exactly all about him. And we are ready to kill him when he comes near. And when Shaul's sister's son heard of the ambush, he went and entered into the barracks and reported to Shaul. So his nephew caught wind of this, goes and reports it to him. And Shaul, having called one of the captains to him, said, Take this young man to the commander, for he has something to report to him. And he indeed then took him and led him to the commander and said, The prisoner Shaul called me to him and asked me to bring this young man to you, having somewhat to say to you. And the commander, having taken him by the hand, went aside by themselves and asked, What is it that you have to report to me? And he said, The Yehudim have agreed to ask that you bring Shaul down to the council tomorrow, as intending to inquire more exactly about him. Therefore, do not let them persuade you, for more than 40 of them lie in wait for him, men who have bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink until they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for the promise from you. Then the commander dismissed the young man, having commanded him, Inform no one that you reported this to me. Got it, bro, don't tell anybody. Now get out of here. And having called near a certain 2 captains, he said, Get 200 soldiers ready to go to Caesarea, and 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen, after the 3rd hour of the night, and provide beasts on which to place Shaul, and bring him safely to Felix, the governor. He's like, Man, I am kicking this thing up the chain of command. I need 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, 200 spearmen, and a couple of horses for Shaul to ride. Take this dude to the governor. I want it out of my hair. And having written a letter in this form, Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent governor Felix, Greetings. This man, having been seized by the Yehudim, and being about to be killed by them, I rescued, having come with the body of soldiers, having learned that he was a Roman. And desiring to know the reason that they accused him, I brought him before their council. I found out that he was accused concerning questions of their Torah, but there was no charge against him deserving death or chains. And when I was informed that there was to be a plot against the man by the Yehudim, I sent him immediately to you, having also commanded his accusers to state before you the charges against him. Be strong. There's an awful lot of plotting to do murder here, and we can very easily jump back here into Exodus 20, verse 13. You do not murder. Okay, good. We got that cleared up. It very clearly, at least to me, illustrates the difference between biblical righteousness, obeying the commands of Yah, and doctrinal man-made righteousness. We got to kill this guy because he's dangerous to our man-made religion. Yeah. So the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Shaul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the next day, they left the horsemen to go on with him and return to the barracks, who, having come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Shaul to him. And the governor, having read it, and having asked of what province he was, and being informed that he was of Cilicia, said, I shall hear you when your accusers arrive also. And he commanded him to be kept in Herod's palace. He said, cool, glad you're here. I will hear what you have to say when the party that's accusing you arrives as well. Cool your heels, bro. I'll let you know when it's go time. And then lastly, we're going to read 24 today as well. I know 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We did start in 20, did we not? 20. We're covering a lot of ground. And after 5 days, the high priest Hananiah came down with the elders and a certain speaker to Tertullus, and they brought charges against Shaul before the governor. We're just going to call this high priest Hannah, okay? Hannah. And when he was called upon, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, having obtained great peace through you, and reforms being brought to this nation by your forethought, we accept it always and in all places, most excellent Felix, with all thanks. But in order not to hinder you in any further, I beg you hear us briefly in your gentleness. For having found this man, Shaul, a plague, who stirs up dissension among all the Yahudim around throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes, Nazarite, Nazareth, set apart. That Naza means set apart. The Nazarenes, who also tried to profane the set apart place, the temple, and whom we seized and wished to judge him according to our law. But the commander Lysias came along with much violence and took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. And by examining him yourself, you shall be able to know all these matters of which we accuse him. And the Yahudim also agreed, maintaining that these matters were so. And when the governor had motioned him to speak, Shaul answered, quote, knowing that for many years you have been a judge of this nation, I gladly defend myself, seeing you are able to know that this is not more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. And they neither found me in the set-apart place disputing with anyone, nor stirring up the crowd, either in the congregations or in the city. Nor are they able to prove the charges of which they now accuse me. Bearing false witness. There's Torah for that too. Exodus 20. Highly recommended that you read it. And this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, this is Shaul speaking, so I worship the Elohim of my fathers, believing all that has been written in the Torah and the prophets, having an expectation in Elohim, which they themselves also wait for, that there is to be a resurrection of the dead, both the righteous and the unrighteous. And in this I exercise myself to have a clear conscience towards Elohim and men always. To be clear, this is the completeness of understanding the Torah, the prophets, and the resurrection. And if you're thinking to yourself, cool story, Bear, righteousness means blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah, but don't you see there's going to be a resurrection of the unrighteous as well? Yes, for judgment. Revelation 19, read it. There will be a resurrection. And what does Yeshua say in Matthew 7:21? Depart from me, you who work lawlessness. I never knew you. Get the hell away from me, you people who aren't keeping Torah. I never knew you. And after many years I came to bring kind deeds to my nation and offerings, at which time certain Yehudim from Asia found me cleansed in the set-apart place, neither with a crowd nor with disturbance, which are the accusations that are being made against him, who ought to be present before you to bring charges if they have any matter against me. Or else let these themselves say if they found any wrongdoing in me while I stood before the council, other than for this one declaration which I cried out, standing among them, concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged by you today. And having heard this, having known more exactly about the way, Felix put them off, saying, when Lysias the commander comes down, I shall decide your case. We're just going to press pause for a moment. And he ordered the captain to keep Shaul and to have ease, and to not forbid any of his friends to attend him. And after some days, when Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was a female Yehudi, he sent for Shaul and heard him concerning the belief in Messiah. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the judgment to come, righteousness, blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah, and self-control, do Yah's things, not your things, and the judgment to come, Revelation 19. Yeah, there will be a resurrection of the dead, and everybody will be judged. And the only people who will be seen fit to not be consumed by the fires of hell will be those who believe on the name of Yeshua Messiah. And if you're needing some clarity here, the book of James, you say you have belief, I will show you my belief by my works. Because as a body is dead without a soul, so is faith dead without works. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the judgment to come, Felix became frightened and said, for the present, go, and when I find time I shall send for you. At the same time, too, was he anticipating that money would be given him by Shaul, that he might release him. Therefore he sent for him more often and conversed with him. But after 2 years had passed, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix, and wishing to do the Yehudim a favor, Felix left Shaul bound. And we'll end there today. So Shaul spends 2 years testifying to this Felix fellow, waiting a more complete trial. The testimony of Shaul. The Torah, the prophets, and the resurrection, a completeness of understanding. And anybody that tells you that the law was done away with because Paul said, has either not thoroughly examined their word or is lying to you. And that's why I always encourage y'all to read your word with your eyes, to pray over it to your Creator and ask Him to convict your heart so that you can find truth, so that you can walk in the ways of your Messiah. Don't take my word for it. Shalom.